by the family, was the second oldest of his father's 6 children. He was born after Alice, 1884, the daughter of Theodore's first wife, Alice Hathaway Lee Roosevelt, who died 2 days after giving birth to their daughter. The other Roosevelt children, in order, were Kermit, 1889, Ethel, 1891, Archie, 1894, and young Quentin, 1897. The boys tended to pair off by ages. Ted and Kermit were the oldest, often compared, and tight childhood companions. Likewise, Archie and Quentin, the younger boys, were measured one against the other. Ethel, the middle child and the only girl after Alice, grew up closer to Ted and Kermit than the younger boys. Ted's moral education began early. It is difficult to overemphasize how deeply ingrained in Ted's life were the ethics of manly honor and being a Christian soldier. My father believed very strongly in the necessity of each boy being able and willing not only to look out after himself, but to look out for those near and dear to him. Ted would write. This gospel was preached to us from the time we were very, very small. Father told me one day always to be willing to fight anyone who insulted me. Both, mother and father, believed in robust righteousness, Pilgrim's Progress, and the battle hymn of the Republic we knew when we were very young. When Father was dressing for dinner, he used to teach us poetry. I can remember memorizing all the most stirring parts of Longfellow's Saga of King Olaf, Sheridan's Ride, and the Sinking of the Cumberland. His father taught Ted Jr. the gallant incidents of history on walks to work with Theodore when the future president was serving in the first McKinley administration. He would pause to sketch out Civil War battle positions, the epic struggles of Union and Confederate troops, in the dust of the Washington city streets for his son before proceeding on to his workday. Ted was immersed in his father's erudition from the moment he was born. His knowledge stretched from babies to post-Alexandrian kingdoms. Ted would write many years later. It made little difference into what channels the conversation turned. Sooner or later, Father was able to produce information which often startled students of the theme under discussion. He knew the species of Hannibal's elephants through the shape of the ears as shown through the Carthaginian coins of the period. He could recite the Song of Roland in the original French. He knew the latest laws of reorganization of the state government in Illinois. He could tell you in detail the history of the heavyweight boxing champions. It was never safe to contradict him on any statement, no matter how recent you might feel your information was. Ted was swept away by the romance of his father's stories. In time, he would himself memorize scores of poems and amaze his own soldiers with his ability to recite poetry from the large compendium stored in his own mind. On his own, Ted and his siblings read books by the armfuls. He had a particular interest in epic poetry and French history. At Groton, he wrote poems that suggested their impact and the heroic and tragic daydreams that inhabited his mind. Would God I might die, my sword in my hand, my gilded spur on my heel, with my crested helmet on my head, and my body closed in steel. Would God, when the morning broke, I might by my friends be found, stiff in my war-worn harness, ringed by dead foes all around. For all the romantic and moral instruction inculcating the family, there was a leavening force as well. It was virtually impossible to be a child of Theodore Roosevelt and not have a heightened spirit and active sense of play. If their father was home and working, there came a moment in every day when he would close down his office and head outdoors with commands for the children to gather. When he wasn't directing them in what Theodore liked to call a scramble, which was really a set of physical tests, like an obstacle course, or a fast-paced hike over rugged terrain, always done as a staggered race to compensate for the youngest among them, he was ordering them to the horses for a ride, or the rowboats for a paddle across the bay, or to the